So moving on from the Florida Gators, but only slightly because we're going to talk about a former Gator here and a player who is, you know, one of the poster children, I should say, of this era of transfers and COVID years, as he's one of the few last ones who's getting a COVID year here, and that's David Reese. So guy who played at Cal the last couple seasons, started his career at Florida, and is now going to end his career. We presume he's ending his career here, unless there's another year of eligibility floating out there somewhere. But David Reese headed to Syracuse, a guy who's actually pretty productive the last couple years at Cal, has battled some injuries in his career. Coming out, I think was looked at more, because this is someone that you and I remember as a recruit. I think was looked at as more of an inside linebacker, turned out to eventually become more of a pass rusher, more of an edge here at this stage of his career. But a good veteran pickup, you have to say, if you're Fran Brown in Syracuse.
It'd be a guy you interviewed, how many years ago? That must have been 2017,
Yeah.
right? So 8 years ago,
Shoot.
9 years ago, you interviewed this guy.
Yeah.
So pretty amazing. 8th year of college, just for some, and then, look, the COVID year, the 2 red shirts, that's how we landed here. But if you look just for perspective, some of the guys in his class, Trevor Lawrence, Micah Parsons, Pat Surtain, the second, he's almost old enough for Pat Surtain the first, and Jaylen Waddle. So some guys that have been playing professional football for a long time were in that class. 6'2", 240, out of Vero Beach, Florida. That's on Florida's Treasure Coast, north of South Florida, on the east side of the state. Didn't play much at Florida, 5 seasons, only 15 tackles. But then he goes to Cal and really starts to pick it up. In the last 2 seasons, playing mostly on that edge, 55 tackles, 11 sacks, and 5 forced fumbles. There you see that 4-star explosiveness. This was a highly recruited player when he did sign with Florida originally. So he has that explosiveness in his body. He's physically mature. He's found his position, and really he's thrived. And if you're Syracuse, again, you lose Fadil Diggs to the pros. This is someone who you got from Texas A&M, maybe a little bigger than David Reese, but a similar type of profile as that slimmer, leaner edge. He'll come in, help fill that void. I'm sure that you do not want to take a step back if you're Fran Brown. You want to keep that momentum going. You need win-now players. You need experience. And I don't think there's anybody in college football that's more experienced than David Reese as an 8th-year player on a defense that, most of these guys weren't even in high school, right, when he came out. Not even. So it's amazing how the college game has changed. Usually these are like Mormon guys that are this age. And they don't have the experience in college. So interesting times. We'll see if this happens more often now that you have the JUCO ruling with Diego Pavia, making it a question whether JUCO years count for eligibility. Do you see guys take 2 years at JUCO, redshirt, and then play 7 years, 8 years? The COVID year obviously going to change things for some of these guys, but there's still other ways to stretch out that eligibility. So we'll see if this is norm. But I think for Syracuse, you want to compete in that conference this next year. You do not want to take a step back. Ricky Collins at quarterback. We'll see how he replaces Kyle McCord, who was the most prolific passer in the country. You bring back Trevor Pena. You lost a lot at wide receiver. You lose LaQuint Allen, but you do have pieces there, and you hope to keep it going.
Yeah, and here's the full transfer list for Syracuse. It hasn't necessarily been like a banner class, loaded with highly ranked transfers. Jean-Ray Reed from left there going to SC. So that was, a huge loss for them. But then you look at the guys that they've added. Ricky Collins, you mentioned, Nikhil Bertrand at offensive tackle coming over from Alabama. Chris Thomas, 6'6", 327, defensive lineman from Marshall. David Reese here. Tyshawn Russell at wide receiver. Fran Brown Jr. there. So again, it hasn't been a crazy transfer class if you're Syracuse. So you'd have to say this is one of their better pickups.
Yeah, and look, here's what I'll say. Last year, we were not talking about Syracuse like we're talking about it now, right? So, Fadil Diggs was a pretty highly acclaimed transfer because he was such a good high school recruit. Kyle McCord, same thing. But Jackson Meeks had barely played, right, when he transferred from Georgia. He was not an impact player at Georgia, goes to Syracuse, and then you see him at the Senior Bowl. So, we'll see how these things turn out, but you got to trust the coaching. You got to trust what they're going to do to develop these guys. Again, I'm looking at Jackson Meeks just to give an example. 44 yards, 65 yards, 23 yards, first year Syracuse, over 1,000 yards. So trust the coaching staff. If you're a Syracuse Orange fan, they've earned that with just the incredible turnaround that they had. They just need, they need players, they need bodies that fit what they want to do. And I think Reese fits right into that Diggs role. Maybe not as highly acclaimed, but he was a blue chip player coming out, and that age matters, man. That's why these BYUs of the world always overperformed. There's something about being an older, more physical player. And I think Reese, someone who's had 11 sacks the past 2 years, it wouldn't shock me if he breaks through and has double-digit sacks this year in the ACC. It's certainly possible. He's familiar with the conference, even though he's coming from Cal. So that's one to watch. I think it's a good pickup, and we'll help them right away.
I mean, listen, he's goes up against a freshman. He's going to have to show some of that grown man strength on him. Has about 7-8 years on some of these guys. But no, man, I think it's some people would say it's not a good thing. But if you're David Reese, you got an opportunity here now to make some money, NIL-wise, be a part of, a team that's definitely ascending here in the ACC. And you leave Cal, so you're familiar here with the ACC, but should be an interesting potential season for him at Syracuse here. And
that turf's going to help him get off too.
Yeah.
Syracuse, the reason why they've had so many pass rushers over the years, including Diggs last year, you can get off that turf pretty quick for an explosive player like Reese.
It's like a small ballpark in baseball. I know you like the baseball
there you go.
terminology. So